Today we're ranking the absolute worst places and times to be a male concubine. Welcome to ancient Greece, where every promising young boy gets assigned an older man for his intellectual development. These boys are known as the eromenos, the beloved in what Greeks call the most civilized relationship in human history. These boys will perform, dance, and sing for men way older than them, all in the name of becoming smarter. During the 5th century BC Athens, this was the way of life for most middle-class boys. If a young boy around the age of 12 to 18 showed promise, then crowds of older men in their 30s and 40s would literally compete for him, knocking on his door, writing poems, singing songs, comparing him to gods, all for a chance to mentor him. These older mentors were called erastes, meaning lovers, and they treated the boy's beauty as social status symbols. The whole system was called pederasty, and it was totally normal back then. Once chosen, the boy faced strict behavioral rules. Show enthusiasm and be labeled shameless. Act resistant and be called ungrateful, risking public humiliation or beatings with rods that left bruises and scars. Boys performed at symposia, elite drinking parties where grown men would make physical demands while the boys served wine and entertainment. The psychological pressure broke many, with some boys fleeing Athens to escape the social stigma. I'm starting to think this wasn't just about mentorship. Take the famous Socrates. Yes, that one. He became obsessed with the young Alcibiades. Socrates claimed he was only interested in Alcibiades' mind and soul. Sure, Socrates. Alcibiades had to deal with constant public attention, jealous competition between older men, and pressure to perform at every social gathering. The poor guy couldn't go anywhere without some philosopher writing poetry about his looks. After turning 18, these boys had several options: become a magistrate, join the military, pursue philosophy, or, if they chose, become the creepy older guy writing poetry about the next batch of pretty boys. The cycle continues, and apparently the system produced better citizens. Well, at least they were pretentious about it. And speaking of pretentiousness, do you like femboys? Well, this is where it all started. In Edo, Japan, being a femboy was an actual career path. In fact, almost everyone became a femboy at one point. No, seriously, back in 1629, when Japan banned female performers, the entire country just went, well, guess we're all into boys now. 14-year-old boys would find themselves wearing kimonos with sleeves so long they were practically capes. Grown men, mostly samurai, would be literally writing poetry about their haircut. Yeah, that single forelock of hair. Apparently, that thing was a man magnet. This whole thing was called nanshoku, meaning male-male love, and it was totally accepted. Boys aged 10 to 18 got selected for their looks and trained as performers. The hottest wakashu, which just means youth in Japanese, in town were kabuki actors. These pretty boys were getting mobbed by fans like modern pop stars, except instead of screaming teenagers, it's armed warriors with too much disposable income. A wakashu's social life was basically speed dating with swords involved. Tea ceremonies would turn into bidding wars where samurai would compete to become the boy's ninja, his official sponsor, who would provide money, teach combat skills, and provide protection while getting exclusive access. These boys lived in constant competition because losing your looks meant losing everything. Take Yoshizawa Ayame I. He was so pretty that audiences would literally brawl over seats to watch him dance. Wealthy guys threw money at him like he was a modern pop star, all fighting for some alone time with him. He basically invented what kabuki became, but the moment people got bored of his face, well, he was pretty much nothing. But the moment a wakashu turned 20 and got that coming-of-age haircut, snip, he went from pursued to pursuer overnight. Some became successful kabuki actors, merchants, or even opened their own tea houses. Others faced lifelong stigma as used goods. Many turned to prostitution or committed seppuku because the shame was too much. And some chose to become the creepy older guy writing poetry about the next batch of pretty boys. So it's basically a cultural cycle where everyone gets their turn, but with makeup and shamisen music. At least there was an end date, though. Imagine having so much political power that senators fear you, but knowing that if your sugar daddy emperor dies, you'll be forced to kill yourself within hours. Meet Dongshan, the teenage boy who learned that fake power is worse than no power at all. During the Han Dynasty, from 206 BCE to 220 CE, boys aged 14 to 18 ended up as imperial favorites through family connections, tribute gifts, or just being in the wrong place when the emperor walked by. Bisexuality was totally normal for Chinese emperors, so these boys had to act like they were giving political advice while really just keeping the emperor happy in more personal ways. They got fancy titles, but everyone knew what their actual job involved. After becoming the emperor's favorite, these boys lived in a golden cage with very sharp bars. Sure, they got silk robes and government positions, but every day meant dodging court officials who wanted them dead. Rival favorites trying to slip poison in their food, and an emperor whose mood swings could literally mean death. Boys got beaten with bamboo rods for stupid mistakes like dropping a scroll, leaving wounds that had to be hidden under makeup, so they'd still look pretty. The psychological pressure was insane. Everyone hated them except the one guy keeping them alive. One such person was Dongshan, became Emperor Ai's obsession when he was just 16. The emperor showered him with gifts and promoted him to Grand Marshal. But Dongshan had to deal with nightly visits while pretending he totally loved spending quality time with a middle-aged dude during the day. Court officials constantly plotted to assassinate him and openly degraded him for trading his body for power. When Emperor Ai suddenly died in 1 BCE, soldiers immediately surrounded Dongshan's house and basically said, "Drink this poison or we'll torture you to death in public." Both Dongshan and his wife had to chug poison together while guards watched. Most boys who survived their emperor's death faced immediate assassination by the next ruler's supporters. The smart ones killed themselves first to avoid being strangled or beheaded, their corpses displayed as political statements. Now, if someone you know is looking for a job that combines military training with nighttime consultation, well, I've got quite the medieval career path for them. Imagine being a 15-year-old Kipchak boy who gets kidnapped and then sold at a slave market, trained into a super soldier while also having to deal with owners getting handsy. Welcome to medieval Egypt's most efficient human trafficking operation disguised as a military academy. During the 13th to 16th centuries, the Mamluks kidnapped boys aged 13 to 18 from places like the Caucasus and Central Asia through organized slave raids. These kids had no local family ties, making them perfect for molding into loyal soldiers. The attractive ones got selected for double duty: elite military training during the day, personal service at night. Some unlucky ones got selected to be castrated to create eunuch servants, and roughly half of those died from the medieval surgery. During daylight hours, boys learned horseback riding, archery, swordsmanship, all the skills needed to become elite warriors. But masters also claimed boys needed extra tutoring sessions in private. Masters convinced boys that serving them was actually serving God, turning religious devotion into psychological manipulation. Refuse orders and face whippings, branding with hot irons, or having your name permanently erased. And yeah, the chronic pain and constant urinary problems from the castration were just part of the deal. Only favorites got decent food and shelter. Some slaves made it big as generals, administrators, even sultans, but the success rate was basically like winning the lottery, except instead of buying a ticket, they were giving up their childhood and body parts. Most died young from campaigns, medical complications, or just pissing off their masters. Many former slaves became slave owners themselves, keeping the cycle going. Now, you've probably heard that the Islamic Golden Age was all about mathematics and astronomy. They just forgot to mention the how to write romantic poetry about underage boys classes. Welcome to Baghdad, where a 14-year-old boy from a poor family just got selected for advanced education at the Caliph's palace. During the 8th to 13th centuries, this was how cultural patronage worked in the Islamic world. Boys aged 14 to 16 got grabbed during slave raids in Central Asia and Byzantium, specifically targeting regions known for attractive kids. These boys became gulams, male slaves trained in arts and music to serve as entertainers. Wealthy men called themselves art patrons while shopping for pretty boys at slave markets. I'm starting to think this wasn't just about artistic inspiration. These Ghulam boys got dolled up in silk to serve drinks at fancy parties, basically human decorations that guests could grope between courses. The competition was brutal. Top pretty boy got decent grub and silk robes, while the rest fought over scraps. Poets like Abu Nuwas made entire careers writing about how gorgeous these boys were. Apparently drooling over teenagers was considered high art. The mind games were incredible. Boys got told they should feel honored that their misery was considered beautiful enough for poetry. Most Gulams got tossed aside the moment they hit 18 or developed acne. Turns out, former boy toy wasn't great for the resume, leaving these guys to figure out real jobs with zero skills beyond looking pretty and reciting verses. Now, you know how some rulers collect art or jewels? Well, Queen Nzinga collected something a little different. Ever heard of muscle mommies? Well, meet the original, Queen Nzinga of Ndongo, the ruler who collected men like trophies, forced them into dresses, and made them compete for her attention. See, Queen Nzinga of Ndongo had a problem. Too many men, too much testosterone, and way too many potential threats to her throne. Her solution? Turn enemy warriors into her personal dress-up dolls. During the 1620s to 1660s, captured warriors, political hostages, and nobles who got too big for their britches found themselves getting fitted for a whole different kind of britches. The feminine kind. After capture, the whole point was breaking their identity completely. Queen Nzinga herself took on the masculine role, wearing male dresses, commanding armies, while her former enemies learned the fine art of applying makeup without smudging. These boys also had to learn walking, talking, and acting like ladies while serving drinks at parties where Nzinga's actual female warriors openly laughed at their situation. The clever part? She used traditional Chibado roles, a recognized third gender position, to give religious backing to their forced feminization, basically saying, "Congratulations, your forced dress wearing comes with spiritual prestige." Accounts don't give us a specific number, safe to say even one is too many. The competition for Nzinga's favor turned these former warriors into backstabbing gossips faster than a reality TV show. Refused to perfect that feminine walk? Off with the head, literally. Some accounts suggest Nzinga made them fight to the death while wearing their pretty dresses, with the loser's body getting hacked up. Some became advisors who helped negotiate treaties, but they were still fundamentally boys forced to live as women to satisfy one person's political control. Now, at least these guys still have their manhood, right? Well, not if they were heading to Constantinople. Now, we're at Byzantine Constantinople, where boys between 10 and 15 years old were about to lose some very important body parts for a government job. The Byzantine Empire had a staffing problem. They needed administrators who couldn't overthrow them, and personal companions who could handle the emperor's or any high-ranking officials' more private needs. From the 6th to 15th centuries, boys aged 10 to 15 got recruited for this unique career combo through medieval surgery that would make modern doctors faint. Parents sold boys to recruiters promising bright government futures, or kids got snatched during raids and dragged into the eunuch system. The castration procedure was basically medieval butchery, crude knives to remove everything, boiling oil dumped on the wound to stop bleeding, zero anesthesia or actual medical knowledge. About half the boys died from blood loss, infection, or just shock. But hey, the survivors got guaranteed job security in both the government and the imperial bedroom. Their castration made them safe for both roles. No dynastic threats in politics, no pregnancy risks in the bedroom, so they climbed the bureaucratic ladder. But this same genital removal made them targets for constant mockery from court officials who saw them as half men. They served at fancy parties where guests openly joked about their missing parts while they poured wine with shaky hands, knowing any screw-up meant beatings. Their condition meant zero chance of marriage or normal relationships, leaving them completely dependent on imperial favor to survive. Most eunuchs got replaced by newer arrivals when emperors wanted fresh entertainment, often abandoned to beg or die when no longer useful. If anyone's looking for the absolute worst fate a male concubine could face, they'd want to avoid making one very specific mistake in ancient Rome. Ever wondered what happens when an emperor gets really attached to his dead wife? Well, one unlucky kid in ancient Rome found out the hard way, and it involved surgery, wedding dresses, and a whole lot of psychological trauma. From 14 to 69 CE, Roman emperors like Tiberius and Nero kept male concubines aged 7 to 18 as slaves captured from wars or bought at markets. Keeping them youthful was solved the Roman way: knives, boiling oil, and no anesthesia. About half died on the table, and the survivors spent the rest of their short lives terrified of spilling a goblet. The lucky survivors faced a life where their only job was keeping powerful Romans happy through whatever evening services were demanded. These boys served at fancy dinner parties where they poured wine while guests would jeer, grab, and grope them for entertainment. The most infamous case was Sporus. Sporus got the special treatment in 65 CE when 14-year-old him had the catastrophic bad luck of looking exactly like Nero's dead wife, Poppaea. Nero had him castrated with primitive surgical tools, dressed in Poppaea's actual gowns, and forced into a public wedding ceremony where Rome had to pretend this mutilated kid was the reborn empress. After Nero's suicide in 68 CE, Sporus got passed to Emperor Otho, then Vitellius, still being used as a replacement wife. In 69 CE, when Vitellius planned to have him publicly assaulted in gladiatorial games for crowd entertainment, 18-year-old Sporus chose suicide over one more day of living as someone else. And Nero wasn't the only monster on the throne. Emperor Tiberius kept his own collection of boys on Capri, some as young as 7, trained as swimmers for his private parties. These kids got trained to perform degrading underwater activities as fish, or forced into group entertainment sessions that would make modern people call the police. refuse participation, and get whipped with, you guessed it, lead-tipped cords, thrown off cliffs, or some perverted version of crucifixion. All served as warnings to other boys. The end was, again, almost always the same. By 20, concubines were either dumped into brothels, sold to smaller households, or freed with nothing.